Buffalo Bills fans, buckle up, because there is a ticking time bomb sitting right in the middle of this defense, and almost nobody is talking about it. Forget the quarterback conversation for a minute. Forget the wide receivers. There is a group of players lining up at inside linebacker in 2026 that could either be the secret weapon that finally gets this team over the hump, or the soft underbelly that gets exposed the second the lights get bright in January. And the wildest part? Even the people who cover this team every single day cannot agree on which one it's going to be. Today, we are diving deep into the chaos, the hype, the risk, and the redemption arc brewing at inside linebacker for the Buffalo Bills. We've got a $41 million man with an ankle that might be held together with tape and prayers. We've got a rookie fourth-rounder who some insiders think could be the steal of the draft. We've got a brand new defensive coordinator who is about to rip up the old playbook and start fresh. And we've got a front office that, for reasons nobody can quite explain, has left this entire group without a safety net heading into one of the most important seasons in franchise history. So grab a seat, because this story has everything: hope, fear, contract drama, and a coaching staff that is about to find out exactly what they've got. Let's get into it. A new sheriff, a new philosophy. Everything about this linebacker story starts with one name: Jim Leonhard. He is the Bills' brand new defensive coordinator, and if you have not heard his coaching philosophy yet, you are about to fall in love with it. Because after years of watching Buffalo's defense get tangled up in complicated schemes and communication breakdowns under the previous coaching staff, Jim Leonhard is walking in with a message that is refreshingly simple: stop overthinking it. This is a coach who has openly said that the best teachers use the fewest words. He believes that the more players have to think out on the field, the slower they play, and that the whole point of coaching is to strip away the clutter so guys can just go out there and react. He wants it simple. He wants it efficient. And most importantly, he wants his players to have fun playing fast instead of freezing up trying to remember 8 different checks before the snap. Now here's where it gets spicy. Leonhard has also said, and this is basically a mic drop quote if you're a Bills fan who sat through some of those head-scratching defensive performances over the last few years, that football is a simple game that gets complicated by coaches. He's talked about how the sport can absolutely be made more intricate than it needs to be, and how true mastery isn't about piling on more layers. It's about stripping things down so a player's natural instincts and athleticism can take over. Read between the lines on that one for a second. That is about as close as you're going to get to a coach throwing a subtle jab at the system that came before him without actually naming names. And to be clear, nobody is trying to drag the previous regime through the mud here. There's genuine respect for what came before. But there is also a very real sense that the linebacker room in Buffalo has been drowning in complexity for years. And now, finally, somebody is throwing them a life raft. If this new simplified approach works the way it's supposed to, it could unlock a level of instinctive, downhill, attacking linebacker play that Buffalo simply has not seen in years. And that brings us to the 2 names that have people the most fired up heading into training camp. The rookie who has everyone buzzing. Let's talk about Caleb Alarmzor first, because if you like a good underdog story, this is the one to watch. He's a 4th-round pick out of TCU, which means on paper he's just another late-round flyer. But dig into the tape, and you start to understand why some people around this team are treating him like a potential building block for the future of this defense. Alarmzor is being described as a downhill, physical, attacking linebacker who can shed blocks and get to the football with real aggression. What's even more intriguing is the processing side of his game. This isn't a guy who's constantly out of position or guessing wrong. The read is usually correct. If there's a critique, it's that his trigger could be a hair quicker, but that is a far cry from a player who doesn't know where he's supposed to be. Combine that with serious athleticism and good size, and you've got the ingredients for a player who could massively outperform his draft slot. Here's the thing, though. Even with all that hype, there's a real chance Alarmzor doesn't get thrown into a starting role right away. The more likely path might be a rookie season built around special teams and depth reps, with a bigger opportunity waiting in year 2. But do not sleep on this. Given the injury history sitting elsewhere in this linebacker room, and given how often Buffalo has had to dig into its linebacker depth chart over the past several seasons, there is a very real chance Alarmzor gets thrown into the fire sooner than anyone expects. And when that chance comes, the early word is that he's going to make the most of it. The contract year storyline you need to know then, there's Dorian Williams, a name Bills fans should already be very familiar with, and 2026 might be the year that defines his entire career trajectory. Williams has steadily improved across his first 3 seasons in Buffalo, and the style of player he is fits exactly what you'd want out of an attacking, high-energy defense. He's physical. He's got good size. He plays with an aggressive, hair-on-fire mentality that makes him fun to watch, even when the results aren't always perfect. But here's what turns this into a genuine storyline instead of just a roster note. This is a contract year for Dorian Williams. And it might also be the first time in his career that he's handed the reins as a true full-time, every-snap starter. Put those two things together, a make-or-break financial situation and a golden opportunity to prove he belongs, and you've got a player with every possible incentive to have a career year in 2026. Add in a defensive scheme that's specifically being built to let instinctive players fly around and make plays, and it is not hard to see why so many people are circling Dorian Williams as one of the most fascinating storylines on this entire roster. Now for the part that should worry you, okay? We've done the hype. We've done the excitement. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, because his name is Terrell Bernard, and he is sitting on a contract that could either age beautifully or become one of the more uncomfortable conversations in the building. Bernard is 27 years old, and he is entering year 1 of a 4-year, $41 million contract. That is starter money, real money. The kind of contract that signals a team believes in a player long-term. And to be fair, General Manager Brandon Beane has handed out plenty of contracts recently that look like absolute home runs. But this one has some people nervous, and it's not hard to understand why. Let's start with the injuries, because this is not a one-time fluke. Bernard has dealt with a pattern of injury issues stretching all the way back through his college career and continuing into the NFL. Most recently, there was ankle surgery, and there is real concern that this could turn into a chronic issue that follows him for the rest of his career. When a player is this talented but this fragile, the conversation always comes back to the same brutal question: it doesn't matter how good you are if you can't stay on the field. And it's not just about availability. Even when he's healthy and playing at his best, there are questions about his game. Bernard is a leaner, more athletic linebacker, and when it comes to taking on blocks and playing downhill through contact, that part of his game has never been a strength. He tends to have to commit to a side rather than taking blockers on square, and if he guesses wrong, opposing offenses can absolutely gash the defense right through that gap. Now, to be fair, this isn't a player without redeeming qualities. His coverage instincts are legit, he's got range, he can run sideline to sideline, and he's a genuinely effective blitzer. But when you're paying someone $41 million over 4 years, you need more than some redeeming qualities. You need reliability, and that's exactly the piece that's in question. So here's the real drama. The Bills are locked into this deal for at least the next 2 seasons, with no real escape hatch until after 2027. That means no matter what happens on the field this year, Terrell Bernard isn't going anywhere. The front office is committed for better or worse, and everyone is about to find out which one it's going to be. A roster full of unknowns. If the Bernard contract situation wasn't enough to keep you up at night, here's problem number 2. This entire linebacker room is basically a giant question mark. Even if you consider Bernard the most proven, most established player in the group, and he probably is, there are still massive uncertainties surrounding him. Can he actually stay healthy through a full season? How does his game translate into this new scheme? And once you move past Bernard, it only gets murkier. Dorian Williams was originally drafted for a completely different defensive system, and now he's stepping into a contract year under new leadership with a whole new playbook to learn. Caleb Alarmzor is a rookie fourth-round pick who, talented as he may be, is still an unproven commodity at the NFL level. Beyond those three, you're looking at players who project more as special teams contributors than difference makers on defense. Now, there's a silver lining buried in here. When you look specifically at Williams and Alarmzor, there is legitimate ceiling, real star potential if things break the right way. But ceiling and floor are two very different things, and right now, there isn't a single player in this linebacker room who can be pointed to as a guaranteed, dependable, this guy is going to show up every single week no matter what type of contributor. That is a scary place to be for a team with legitimate championship aspirations. The move the Bills still haven't made, and this brings us to what might be the most maddening part of this entire situation. The Buffalo Bills, as of this recording, still have not signed a proven veteran linebacker to provide insurance for this group. Not one. And there were multiple options sitting right there on the open market. Players like Shaq Thompson, Jermaine Pratt, and Bobby Okereke have all been available. Guys with real NFL starting experience who could step in and provide a safety net if this young, unproven, injury-prone group hits a snag. This isn't a hypothetical, maybe they should look into it situation either. Insiders have been saying for months that the Bills should have already made this move. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and the silence from the front office on this front has been deafening. Maybe the coaching staff has full confidence in the guys already in the building. Maybe they've seen enough in practice to feel good about rolling with what they've got. But from the outside looking in, choosing not to add a single veteran hedge to a linebacker room this thin on proven talent feels like rolling the dice with a championship window that doesn't stay open forever. And look, this is a fixable problem. All it takes is one signing. Bring in Shaq Thompson on a modest one-year deal. Give Bobby Okereke a call. See what Jermaine Pratt's market looks like. Heck, even a name like Bobby Wagner has been floated. The point is, the fix here is simple and inexpensive, and the fact that it hasn't happened yet is exactly the kind of storyline that could blow up into a major regret if injuries start piling up in October. The redemption arc nobody saw coming, but let's pump the brakes on the doom and gloom for a second, because there's a genuinely fascinating twist hiding in this story, and it centers right back on Terrell Bernard. Remember how we said his game has some real question marks under the previous defensive system? Well, here's the plot twist. Bernard was actually drafted out of college to play in a defensive style much closer to what this new coaching staff is about to install. Back in college, Bernard built his reputation as an electric blitzer and gap shooter, someone who thrived attacking downhill instead of dropping into complicated zone coverage. Under the old Buffalo system, there was a lot of spot drop, read the quarterback from a landmark-type coverage. It worked at times, sure. There were big plays made reading the backfield. But the belief now is that this new scheme is going to feature a lot more man coverage and zone match principles, which means less wide-open real estate for Bernard to read and react to, and a lot more find your guy and stick to him like glue. In theory, that plays directly into his athletic strengths and could let him play faster and more aggressively than fans have ever seen from him in Buffalo. So here's the real cliffhanger heading into training camp. Terrell Bernard is walking into a brand new coaching staff with zero carryover from the old regime, and he has to prove all over again that he deserves to be out there on every single snap. His contract guarantees him a roster spot. It does not guarantee him a starting job. If this new coaching staff isn't fully sold on his skill set, there's nothing stopping them from leaning on Alarmzor and Williams as the primary duo and leaving Bernard on the sideline more often than his contract would suggest. That is a genuinely dramatic storyline heading into camp. A $41 million man who has to win his job back from scratch. The depth chart battle brewing behind the scenes, there's also a fascinating subplot playing out further down the roster. Keep an eye on Joe Andre, a local kid whose feel-good hometown story is now facing a real test. Under the old regime, part of his appeal was the story itself. But under this new coaching staff, sentiment doesn't matter, only performance and fit. And here's the interesting part. His downhill, physical, non-space player style might actually be a better match for this new attacking scheme than it ever was in the old one. He's being compared to the kind of short yardage, goal line thumper that thrived under this coordinator in the past. He's not viewed as a long shot to make the roster, more of a legitimate bubble player who could carve out a real role. Then there's Demetrius Flanagan-Foss, a more recent addition who profiles as exactly the kind of dedicated special teams veteran this roster is looking for. And don't overlook Keshawn Jenkins, an undrafted hybrid player out of Virginia Tech who reportedly flashed during camp and preseason last year and even saw some time on the active roster. In a defensive scheme that rewards versatile, hybrid-type players far more than the previous system did, players like Jenkins could have a real opportunity to climb up the depth chart. The expectation right now is that the Bills keep somewhere between 4 and 5 linebackers on the final roster, with Bernard, Williams, and Alarmzor locking up 3 of those spots. That leaves 1, maybe 2 spots up for grabs between Andre, Flanagan-Foss, and Jenkins, assuming the front office doesn't swoop in and add a veteran at the last minute. It is a genuine training camp battle, and it's one that could dramatically shape Buffalo's special teams units heading into the season. So what does it all mean? Here's the bottom line. Bills Mafia. This inside linebacker group might be the single most fascinating storyline on the entire roster heading into 2026. You've got a new coordinator promising to simplify everything and unleash instinctive attacking play. You've got a former non-committal question mark in Terrell Bernard who might actually be walking into the perfect scheme for his skill set if he can just stay healthy and win over a brand new coaching staff. You've got a pair of young, ultra-athletic building blocks in Dorian Williams and Caleb Alarmzor who both have legitimate star upside but almost zero track record to lean on. And hovering over all of it is a front office that has so far refused to add a single veteran safety net, leaving this entire Group 1 bad injury away from a genuine crisis. Will this be the year the Bills finally get consistent physical playmaking linebacker play, or will this turn into the soft spot that costs Buffalo a shot at the Super Bowl they've been chasing for years? Nobody knows yet. Camp hasn't even really started. But one thing is for certain, this is a storyline you absolutely cannot afford to ignore this season. So here's what we want to know from you. Are you buying the hype on Dorian Williams and Caleb Alarmzor? Do you think Terrell Bernard bounces back and proves the doubters wrong? Or does that contract turn into a regret? And should the Bills be sprinting to sign a veteran linebacker before camp even opens? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one of them. If this video kept you locked in, do us a favor and smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Drop a comment letting us know what storyline you want us to dig into next, whether that's the cornerbacks, the safeties, or anything else brewing on this Bills roster. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we are breaking down every single storyline on this Buffalo Bills roster all the way through training camp and into the season. Trust us, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching, Bills Mafia. Go Bills, and we'll see you in the next one.